This video was sponsored by DistroKid. Inside Audio reached out to this channel once again. Recently, they created these special edition FL Studio mousepads with all of the FL Studio shortcuts and my channel avatar. Link to the mousepads will be in the description section. A cut of these purchases from the mousepads will go towards helping this channel. I just want to be upfront and let everybody know that I'm not an expert. I haven't had any formal music training. Everything I've learned regarding music theory has been self-taught over the past few years while I've been learning music production, so I may make some mistakes in my explanations. If you see any mistakes, or if you have anything to add, make sure to let me know in the comments section. In this video, I'm going to go over a few things regarding music theory, but mostly I want to focus on some instances where it's okay to go outside of a particular scale and use borrowed notes. Borrowed notes are basically just any notes you play in a piece of music that fall outside of the 7 notes of the main scale that you're using. If you just do this randomly, the resulting composition is likely to not sound musical at all, but rather like a haphazard mess of notes with no clear direction. It's useful to know some rules regarding borrowing notes so you know when you can and can't do it. I should also mention that not all musical scales have 7 notes, but the main scales used in Western music, being the major and minor scales, do have 7 notes. For the purposes of this video, I'll just be focusing on major and minor scales. If you don't know major and minor scales and chords, you can learn that stuff with a 5-minute Google search. Seriously, it's not that difficult. If you have FL Studio, there's also a function in the piano roll that lets you stamp scales and chords easily by selecting the scale or chord that you want to create, so it's not completely necessary to have this stuff memorized. Here's some quick background information before we get started. Uppercase Roman numerals denote a major chord. Lowercase Roman numerals denote a minor chord. There are 7 notes in any major or minor scale, and 7 scale degrees associated with them. 1 is the tonic, 2 is the supertonic, 3 is the mediant, 4 is the subdominant, 5 is the dominant, 6 is the submediant, and 7 is the leading tone. Okay, let's get into it. But before that, a word from today's sponsor. If you're looking to sell your music online through platforms such as iTunes and Spotify, then DistroKid is the best way to go about doing that. DistroKid is arguably the best music distribution platform for independent artists, and there's a few reasons why. 1. Affordability. I've used other music distribution services in the past, such as TuneCore. As a point of comparison, TuneCore charges $12 per single release and $36 per album release, whereas DistroKid's yearly plans start as low as $19.99 per year, and they offer you the ability to upload unlimited songs, unlimited lyrics, and other perks, such as a Spotify verified checkmark. 2. It's fast. Delivering your music to platforms such as Spotify with DistroKid can take as little as 5 business days, whereas other music distribution platforms can have you waiting weeks or longer to get your music onto Spotify or iTunes. 3. Splits. If you upload a song or project that you collaborated with another artist on, then DistroKid can split the earnings between collaborators automatically. All you have to do is specify the collaborating artist's email address as well as the percentage of the earnings you want them to receive, and DistroKid will take care of the rest. You never have to worry about accounting. DistroKid will handle it all for you. Your collaborators will need a DistroKid account in order to do this, but they will receive a 50% discount on a yearly plan, meaning it will only cost them $10. 4. DistroKid never takes a cut of your earnings. You and your collaborators get 100% of your earnings in total. If you use my affiliate link in the description section of this video, you will receive a 7% discount on your first yearly plan with DistroKid. A huge thanks to DistroKid for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back into it. The first concept I'm going to go over here is referred to as chromatic mediants. You can probably guess based on the scale degrees that I just went over that this concept is going to be concerned with the 3rd and 6th scale degrees of a particular scale. Let's consider the scale of C major. The mediant and submediant chords of the C major scale are E minor and A minor respectively. There are 3 ways you can alter the mediant or submediant chord, which results in a total of 6 possible chord substitutions. Let's stick with E minor. You can change E minor to E major, which would have the A flat as the borrowed note. You can turn E minor to E flat major, which would have E flat and B flat as borrowed notes. Or you can turn E minor into E flat minor, which would have E flat, G flat, and B flat all as borrowed notes. Let's do an example. I made this chord progression in C major. The progression is 1, 3, 2, and 4. That's C major, E minor, D minor, and F major. It sounds like this. Now let's apply the concept of chromatic mediants and turn the mediant chord, E minor, into E flat minor by moving all the notes of the chord down by 1 semitone. Here's what the chord progression sounds like now. To make this a little more smooth, I might add in a B on the first chord, which would turn the C major chord into a C major 7 chord. Now there are 3 notes in the first chord that walk down one semitone into the borrowed chord, instead of having the B flat just hanging out by itself in the middle of nowhere. Here's what it sounds like now. Okay, I'm starting to see a pattern here where all of these notes seem to be walking downward, so I might opt to change the last chord up a bit and invert the F major chord, putting the C at the bottom. Sounds pretty jazzy. If I want to go even further with this, I can change the last chord from a 4 chord into a 6 chord and do another substitution. In this case, I'll be changing the submediant A minor chord into an A major chord, borrowing the D flat. Now we have 2 chord substitutions, and this whole line here and here moves down by 1 semitone throughout the entire progression. There. Now you know all about chromatic mediants. Progressions like this in hip-hop music might be useful in creating a Tyler the Creator Flower Boy type track, or even some smooth lo-fi type music. The next concept is referred to as secondary dominants. Secondary dominant chords are chromatic harmonies, used to approach a chord other than the 1 chord, also referred to as the tonic, with a greater sense of urgency. In C major, the dominant chord is G major. We can approach the G major chord with a secondary dominant in order to give it a greater sense of direction or to add additional color to the progression. In order to do this, we will borrow the 5 chord of the 5 chord by pretending we are momentarily in the scale of the 5 chord. That probably sounds a little confusing, but trust me, it's not. As we're approaching G major in the C major scale, we're going to pretend for a brief moment that we're in the scale of G major and use its 5 chord, which is D major, right before we land on G major. In this case, the G flat of D major would be the borrowed note. Here's another chord progression in C major. It's 1, 6, 2, 5. Here's what it sounds like. Now we can use the concept of secondary dominance to change the D minor chord into a D major chord. Here's what that sounds like. I might want to mess around with this and turn the 6 chord into a 3 chord so that the transition to the borrowed note only takes a 1 semitone step. And I might want to mess with it further, because the last 2 chords feel like they take a big jump, which makes them sound happier than they need to be. And I'm not a very happy guy, so I might want to invert those. And here's what it sounds like. Okay, let's take what we've learned here and make a beat using those concepts. I'm not going to go as in-depth with this beat as I would with a regular tutorial video, because the main focus here is just music theory, not mixing. I did apply effects like EQ, reverb, and delay to the VSTs, but I'm not going to touch on any of that in this video. The first thing I did was open up a piano in Kontakt, and I laid down some chords in C major. You'll notice that they're all 7th chords. It's just what I felt like doing. The progression is 1, then 3, which is a major 3, not the typical minor 3 that would be in C major. So this is a borrowed chord, using the chromatic mediants concept. Then 5, back to 1, then 3 again. But this is another borrowed chord using the chromatic mediants concept. It's E flat minor 7, then 2, and then 6. But it's a borrowed chord because we're using A major instead of the typical A minor chord that would be in the C major scale, again using the chromatic mediants concept. Here's what it sounds like. I opened up this patch in Massive and I layered the chords. Here's what they sound like layered. I opened up Track God, and I laid down this lead sound. I'll link to this plugin in the description section. I pulled up this saxophone in Contact and I laid down some notes. Here's the drums I came up with. Alright, let's see how the beat turned out.